Hey guys, it's Alexandra from yarncraftsandcoffee.com. Today we're going to be working on an Afghan square worked in half double crochet stitches. I'm going to have multiple sizes ranging from 4 all the way up to 27 inches, so you'll have the perfect size that you'll need for your project. You'll see that broken down in the tutorial for each size. You're going to need some worsted weight yarn for your project. That's a number 4 weight yarn. I'm using Lion Brand Pound of Love. I have the color Denim is the blue, Olive is the green, and then this one is Pumpkin Spice. And then together with that worsted weight yarn, you're going to want to have an H8 5mm crochet hook. There is some flexibility here in your hook if you prefer working with an I9 5.5mm hook. With your worsted weight yarn, that is okay as long as the gauge for your project is not essential. So if you're working a project like a blanket where you're going to make a bunch of squares and sew them together, the finished size is not necessarily essential. It could come out a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, and it's not a big deal. If you're going to do a pillow that's going to fit over a pillow form where the finished size is important so that it will fit the pillow form correctly, you're going to need to take your gauge, and then there is really no wiggle room in the crochet hook size unless you're adjusting it to match gauge. So if gauge is not essential for your project, you can absolutely size up your hook if you're more comfortable with that. If gauge is essential for your project, you're going to want to go ahead and check your gauge before you adjust your hook size. And we're going to talk about gauge together as we get into the tutorial. If you'd like to follow along with written instructions, you're going to find the link to the written pattern in the description box below. The link to my newsletter is also there, and blog subscribers get access to the free file library where they can download PDFs of the patterns. Let's go ahead and get started. We're going to talk about gauge before we get started with our project in case gauge is essential for the project that you're making. You're going to need to work up a gauge swatch before you get started, or at least have this in mind as you're working that you're going to need to take your gauge. In projects where the finished size is not that important, as long as you don't mind that your project might come out a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, you don't need to worry about taking gauge. But if you're working a project where the finished size is important, it's essential that it comes out to a certain size so that it fits you correctly, like a beanie or a shirt. Because we all crochet a little bit differently, we take gauge to make sure that the finished project is going to come out to the correct size. If gauge is essential for your project and you don't check gauge, there is a chance that your finished project will not fit correctly. Simply because you might crochet looser than I do or tighter than I do, so your fabric will come out to a different size. When we're doing gauge, we don't do it from the edges of the project because we're going to get a different measurement here on both ends. We want to take our gauge from the center of our project, so you're going to want to work a sample that is larger than you need. Gauge is going to be taken in this project over 14 half double crochets by 12 rows. So I would recommend working up at least 20 stitches wide so you can get a nice measurement here in the center. The nice thing about this project is that you can measure the length as you go and you can adjust it. I do like to finish with a right side here at the top so that when I turn my work to work the border, the row at the top is opposite this row, it's from the wrong side, and the same at the bottom. But if you do not mind that the right side here might also match the right side of your border, it does not matter if you finish on a right side or wrong side. This is my preference. You can do whatever you like the best. You're also not going to want to take your gauge too close to the bottom. Sometimes the shaping is off here at the bottom. I would recommend at least 6 or 8 rows before you decide to check your width. If you decide not to make a gauge swatch and you just want to go ahead and get started with your project, you can check gauge within the project. I'm also going to be providing width measurements and length measurements of the square so you can check your work as you go. So when we're going to check gauge, I always check it from a right side, that is the row that is not textured or raised up, And the stitches are prettier. They're more defined, so it's easier for me to see the different parts of it. I'm going to pick a spot and I'm going to measure from that spot to the same exact spot on the next stitch. So I always like to go where this V shape here is. You have a smaller leg on the right, a taller leg on the left. I'll go to the right side of that smaller little stitch, right there where that stitch ends. You have a little space here and then you get the V shape again. So right there where that ends, and then count over to the same spot here. That's one stitch. Then to the same spot on the next one, 2 stitches. Same spot on the next one, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So you're going to count 14 half double crochets wide. And this is going to measure 4 inches. If you're measuring smaller than this, you're going to go up to a larger crochet hook size. And if you're measuring larger than this, you're going to go down to a smaller crochet hook size. Rework your sample again and then check your gauge. When your gauge measures the same as mine, then you know that your finished square is going to come out to the same size. When we are measuring the length, we don't want to start from the very bottom because this chain is going to add length. So we want to start at least from right above it where the bottom of row 1 is. Then you're going to measure upward here, counting all of the rows here. 12 rows is going to equal 4 1/8 inches tall. So as you can see here, my gauge is not matching up completely to the length, but that's okay because I can add rows or I can take rows away here if I need to match my gauge better. The most important gauge that I would meet is going to be the width gauge. Adjust your hook size as needed here, and then just work more rows or less rows as needed to hit the length. We're going to start with a slip knot, so I've pulled the yarn over my fingers here. I'm going to wrap it around my index finger 2 times, hold the tension with my thumb and my middle finger, pull the loop on the left up over the other one but not off my finger, then I'll pull the one on the left now up over the other one and off my finger. I'm going to grab my crochet hook, insert it into the loop on my finger and pull it off. I'm going to hold the working yarn in my right hand and the short tail end in my left. I'm going to pull on that strand so this loop will go to normal tension. And now we're ready to get in position so that we can start our chain. Now I like to start by holding on to this knot at the bottom with my thumb and my middle finger so I can keep better tension and so this loop doesn't get too tight to work into. We're going to swoop the hook underneath and behind the strand, that's a yarn over, and then pull it through the loop on our hook. Then I can rotate this and you'll see the first V shape there. Swoop the yarn under and behind the strand to yarn over and pull it through the loop on your hook. Yarn over, pull it through the loop on your hook. Each time you do that, you get one of these V shapes here. We don't count the loop that's on our hook. We have 1, 2, and 3 chains so far. I'm going to put up a chart that shows how many chains you're going to want to have depending on the size that you're working. Now that our chain is complete, we're going to half double crochet into the 3rd chain from the hook. We don't count the loop that's on our hook. We have 1, 2, 3 chains using those V shapes there, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to yarn over and insert my hook in the center of that chain. So swoop your hook underneath and behind to yarn over. Then we'll go into the center of this chain, and as I do that you're going to see that I like to hold the tension here on my hook and turn my chain horizontally to work into. Then yarn over, pull through that stitch. You have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. That's going to complete your very first half double crochet in that 3rd chain. And then the 2 chains that we skipped here in the beginning are going to count as a half double crochet in the final stitch count for the row. We're going to continue to half double crochet into each chain all the way across. So into the center of the next chain, yarn over, insert your hook into the center there, yarn over and pull through, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. Yarn over, insert your hook into the center of the next chain, yarn over and pull through, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. Each time we work a half double crochet, if you rotate your fabric upward, you're going to see these V shapes along the top. There's a bottom leg and a top leg, and together they make this sideways V shape here. When you're ready to count your stitches, this is going to be the easiest way to count them. With the fabric laying flat, you will also see these vertical stitches here. Each one of those is also a half double crochet, but it's the easiest to count from the V shapes at the top. So starting with the one that we just finished, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then when we run out of the V shapes along the top, we have the 2 chains that drop off to the side here, and that's going to be number 7. Those are the skipped chains from the beginning. So I have 7 half double crochets here so far. Now we'll continue half double crocheting into each chain there all the way until we get back to the beginning. Once you're at the end, if you count all of your stitches, you're going to have 1 stitch less than the total number that you chained. And now I've reached the last chain. I'm going to work this stitch as normal. You might notice that your loop enlarges and then the stitch itself enlarges. That's because the slip knot is not secured yet. You can hold on to the slip knot in between your fingers, give the small strand a tug, and it'll close that up so it will go back to normal tension. We'll secure that later when we weave in our ends. But with that stitch, row 1 is now complete. After we make it all the way across this next row, we're going to be working our last stitch into the top chain of those 2 skipped chains from the beginning. It's a little bit easier if you look back at it now to see exactly where you're going to be working. The first official half double crochet has this big V shape here on the top, and then to the right of it you're going to have 1 chain pushed off to the right and then 1 chain along the bottom. That one that's over there on the right, that is where we're going to work the last stitch of this next row. Let's go back. We're going to start with a chain 1, and then we're going to turn our work. And we're going to start with a half double crochet in the very first stitch, which is the stitch that our chain is connected to. So when you're looking at this stitch, you're going to see the vertical part on the bottom that is a small V shape. Then you're going to see a bottom leg above that and a top leg above that. In between that top leg and the bottom leg, you're going to be able to see a hole in there. You're going to push all the way through so that you pick up 2 loops on the top. The V shape that I mentioned for counting, both loops of that you want to pick up on your hook. So we're going to yarn over, then insert right into that stitch, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through all 3 to complete the first half double crochet. The next stitch here, you see the little V shape at the bottom, bottom leg, top leg. We're going into the hole in between, and this bottom leg is actually called the 3rd leg. It's not the bottom leg of this stitch, but I'm just calling it bottom because it's right there on the bottom. We're going to yarn over, insert our hook into the stitch, picking up both loops of the V shape, and then complete our half double crochet. And now we're just going to go ahead and continue to half double crochet into each stitch all the way across to the end. And once we get to the end, we're going to work the last stitch together. Once you work a half double crochet into the last half double crochet, it's going to look like you've finished. We still have one stitch left that we're going to work into the top chain. So I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to locate the top chain. Let me pull this out real quick. It's going to be the very next stitch that you can work into. Looking to where you inserted your hook to work your last half double crochet, to the left, you're going to see a leg that swoops over to the end. Then you're going to see a back bump to the right of that. We're going to be inserting our hook into the chain just to the right of that back bump, pushing behind it so that we pick up that back bump and the top leg that's swooping over where they cross. That's what we want to pick up on our hook. So I'm going to go to that back bump, push to the right, and then when I come through, I'll have both loops on my hook where they both cross. So I'm going to yarn over first, find the back bump, insert my hook to the right of it, and then complete my half double crochet. And now row 2 is officially complete with that last stitch. And here in the beginning, this shaping is going to be off a little bit because of this stitch, but as we work more rows, as we put on the border, this is going to straighten itself out. This is the only half double crochet row where you have to worry about working into a chain. All the other rows from this section are going to be worked into half double crochet stitches. So for this next row, row 3, and all the remaining rows of half double crochet, we're going to work them the same exact way as this next row. We're going to start with a chain 1 and turn. Then we're going to half double crochet into this very first stitch that our chain is connected to. And then half double crochet into each stitch along the top there, all the way until you get to the end. And then once we make it to the end, we work the last stitch into the very last half double crochet. And that's it. This is row 3, and this is how you're going to work all the remaining rows in the half double crochet section. So to start the next one, you'll come here to the end, you'll chain 1, turn your work, then you'll half double crochet into that first stitch and each stitch all the way across the row. As we're looking at our rows, I've flipped back to the end of row 3. I have the beginning tail end here on the bottom left, and my loop to start row 4 is on the top left. Looking at the bottom, you see the chains there along the bottom. Just above that, we see row 1. Row 1 has these vertical stitches here that look a little bit prettier and more defined than the row above it. That means that row 1 is the right side or the front side of the fabric. Row 2 above it looks a little bit different. The bottom of the stitches look like these little V's. The row itself is textured. The stitches are a little less defined. That is the wrong side or the back side of the fabric. And then if we look again above that, now we're looking at the front side or the right side of the fabric, where the stitches are a little bit prettier, they're more defined, they are not raised up like row 2 is. So this is how you're going to look to your fabric when you're looking to count your rows. Right side is 1 row, then the wrong side that's going to be textured is going to be the second row. Your next row is going to be a right side, and then the next row that you work, row 4, will also be textured and raised up like row 2. So when I work in half double crochet, I always count by 2s. I look for that textured row because it catches my eye, so it makes it easy to pull it out, and then I'll count 2, 4, and so on. I've designed this pattern to finish after working from the right side. That way the last row and the first row are worked from the right side. Once you chain 1 and turn to start your border, the border is going to be worked here at the top from the right side that's facing us, which will be opposite this last row, and the same thing down here. It'll be worked from the right side that's facing us, which will be opposite row 1, and that just makes my heart really happy. But if you end up adjusting the number of rows here to match the length better, you can end on a right side or a wrong side, it doesn't matter. We've turned after each row, so the fabric here in the center is identical on the back and on the front. I just do not like my border to be from the right side here and match up with the right side of row 1. This is my preference. Whatever your preference is, go with that. You might not even notice the difference, or it might be so subtle that you don't even mind. So this is what it looks like after we put the border on. And you can see down here at the bottom, this is the border worked from the right side that's facing opposite to row 1. And up here is the last row and then my border. So again, completely up to you how you'd like to finish your project and how you want it to look overall. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you how to add 1 round of single crochet. If you wanted to change this stitch pattern up to a different one, you absolutely could do that. If you wanted to add more than 1 round to your border, you could do that as well, especially if your square is coming out smaller and you want it to be larger. Adding an additional round is a great way to do that. To start the border, we're going to do a chain 1 and turn. And now we're going to single crochet into the very first stitch that our chain is connected to, and each stitch all the way across the top. Insert our hook right into that very first stitch, picking up both loops of the V shape, yarn over and pull through, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through both loops. That's going to complete our single crochet. Insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull through, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through both loops. Insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull through, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through both loops. You're going to notice that these have the same V shape at the top, and that's what you'll use to count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 single crochets so far. Now we'll continue working all the way down until we get to the last stitch, and then we'll work our corner increase together. Now I've reached the last stitch there. We need to work multiple stitches in here so that our corner will lay flat. I'm going to do a single crochet as normal, then I'll do a chain 2 and single crochet back into that same exact stitch. This is going to give me a more squared corner here, And an alternative to this would be single crochet, half double crochet, single crochet. If you prefer a more rounded corner, you could do single crochet, chain 1 single crochet, or 3 single crochets. Whatever you do to this first corner here, you're just going to want to make sure you repeat on all the other corners. Now we're going to get ready to work down the side here, and it's important to note that my tail end is over here on the right side. If your tail end is currently coming out on the left side, then you might want to use the timestamp section to jump ahead to look up the instructions for working up the other side, because your stitches might look a little bit differently here than mine. Both sides are worked very similarly, but because they are the opposite sides of the rows and we've been turning, they do look a little bit different. So now we're going to rotate our fabric here so we can work down this side. And as we work in half double crochet, the general rule is for every 2 rows you're going to have 3 stitches. I'm going to skip these next 2 stitches because the stitch we worked at the top, our corner increase, is part of those 2. So let's go down to the next 2. The easiest ones to pull out from the right side here, you can see this one at the end that looks like a V shape. That's one of our stitches. And then at the top of that second row there's a stitch that looks like a hole. That's stitch number 2. And then the third one you're just going to put in the center of those 2. So this one at the top is the hole. We need to work the one in the center. I want to work as close to the side edge as possible, not in between my stitches, otherwise it's going to pull on the edging and it's going to make it look lacy. So I'm going to go right into the center of the stitch, which is a chain. And when I insert my hook here, I'm going to have right where the bottom chain and the top chain cross, right in the middle on my hook. That's going to give me a nice sturdy stitch for this border stitch. Yarn over and pull through. You can see now that I'm right there in the center of the hole. It's easier to see. And then complete my single crochet. In the next stitch, I'm going to be breaking this stitch in half, inserting right into the center of that half double crochet. When I do that, I'm going to have 2 loops that I'm going to be picking up on my hook. So it's going to look like a V shape on the side as well. And then complete my single crochet. Now we start the next set of 3. Next one looks like a hole. I'm going to go right into the center of the hole. There's going to be 2 loops on my hook here too, but they're a little bit tighter and tougher to see. Then I'm going to go into the hole of the chain right in the center. Right where the 2 legs of the chain cross, that's where my hook is. And complete the single crochet there. And then insert right into the center of the next stitch, breaking it in half, picking up the V shape on the side, and completing my single crochet. And we'll continue all the way down into the hole, into the center in between the 2 rows, and into the side edge of that half double crochet. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. After you work the last stitch there into that half double crochet, you're going to have 2 chains left, and that's going to be from where we skipped the 2 chains in the beginning. I'm going to single crochet into the first chain as normal, and then into the next chain, that's where we're going to work our next corner. So I'll do the same thing I did before, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet right back into that same exact stitch. And if you've changed this to something else, just make sure you repeat whatever you did on this other corner right here. Now we're in a position here to work along the opposite side of the foundation chain. We're looking at the back of the foundation chain, so we see the back bumps here and the top leg of the chain. We're going to insert our hook right into the center of the chain and then complete our stitch as normal. This is going to be a really easy side to work into, similarly to working into the top. Working one single crochet into each stitch all the way across the row there, and then we'll do our next corner increase together. Once we reach the last stitch, we'll do the same thing we've done in the other corners. So mine is single crochet, chain 2, single crochet in the same exact stitch. And if your stitch opens up here, it's because the slip knot is not secured yet. You can hold on to the fabric in between your fingers and give that strand a tug. It'll close your hole back up. I'm going to work 1 or 2 stitches over my tail end, and then I'm going to drop it to the back so I can finish securing that when I weave in my ends. But now we're ready to go ahead and work up that last side. This side is going to look a little bit different than the one before. I'm going to go ahead and skip this next row because that's going to be the same one where we did the stitch into the chain over here, into the first chain. That's the stitch that goes with that one, so I'm skipping that one for now. Looking at the next 2 rows, I have a right side row and a wrong side row right here. I'm looking at those 2. So the wrong side one here has a stitch at the end that is the back side of the half double crochet, has the same V shape on the side. That's 1 stitch right there in the center. Then we have the hole in the middle, which is really easy to see right next to it. That's stitch number 2. And then stitch number 3. It looks like there's 2 options here. There is a chain right here to the right, and then there's a loop to the right of that. You want to avoid that singular loop there on the top and go into that chain right there. The chain is 1 stitch, the hole is the middle stitch, and then the half double crochet is the last stitch. So the next stitch for us here is a half double crochet. I can see the back of it looks like a V shape. Right in the center of it, picking up both loops of the V shape. Skipping that next loop there and going into the chain to the left. Right in the center of the chain. Then into the hole, and it's a little hard to see on camera here, but where the hole is, there is a loop here on the top, there's a loop going diagonally down, and then there's a little hole underneath that as well. We want to make sure we're going into that hole above that bottom leg, right in the center, as close to the edge as you can get. Then into the side of the half double crochet right in the center of it, breaking it in half, and then you have the V shape on your hook. Skipping that loop there at the top, going into the chain to the left, right in the center of it, then into the hole, and then into the half double crochet. And you'll continue with that all the way up. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Once you've worked your last stitch and you've made it back around, we just need to finish the first increase and then join. So we're going to go into the very first stitch, same as where we worked our first single crochet, and complete another single crochet, and then I'm going to do a chain 1 only. We're about to slip stitch, and that's going to take the place of the second chain. Inserting my hook underneath both loops of the V shape from the first single crochet, yarn over, pull through that stitch and through the loop that's on my hook. And that's going to complete this round of the border. If your square is measuring smaller than you want, you could add an additional round of the border to increase the size, but this is where I'm stopping. I already fastened off my strand here, but you're going to leave a tail end long enough you can comfortably weave in and cut your strand. Pull up on that loop from your last stitch, then go into that same stitch that you slip stitched to from the back to the front, yarn over and pull the tail end to the back. Now get your tapestry needles ready and we'll go ahead and weave in our ends. I'm going to go ahead and take this tail end from where I just fastened off and thread it into my tapestry needle. When I'm weaving, I like to do 3 passes. That's my magic number. If you feel comfortable after 2, you can fasten off. If you feel like you need to work a 4th one, you can do that too. I also do not pick up the whole entire stitch on my needle when I enter and exit. Instead, I'm going to insert my needle into the center of the stitch to break it in half. This is going to help to capture my yarn a little bit better. I'm going to insert here in a nearby stitch and run vertically down through several stitches. Once I get to the bottom there, I'm going to go ahead and break that last stitch in half. Hold onto the fabric in between my fingers, push the needle through, and then pull it, give it a tug, and then come back and manipulate the fabric if I need to, if it has bunched up. I want it to lay naturally. Insert here into a nearby stitch, breaking it in half. Run back up through several of those same stitches I just worked into, and break my last stitch in half when I exit. Push the needle up, hold on to the fabric in between my fingers to prevent some of the bunching. Pull the needle through, give it a tug, come back and manipulate the fabric if I need to. And now I'm ready to fasten off. I'll come down here to the bottom where my beginning tail end is, and I'm going to do the same thing. I like to keep my ends going vertically as much as I can. Vertical stitches are going to be easier to hide and not as easy to bunch up. It's really easy to bunch up your stitches as you're working horizontally. I'm also working here as close to the border. I'm actually working into the border stitches here. That's also going to be another way that I'm going to hide the bulkiness of this end. And that's it. Now my little square is ready to go. Guys, thanks so much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, it would help me out a bunch if you would smash that like button to let YouTube know that you enjoyed it. Check out the description box for the link to the written pattern, as well as the link to my newsletter where you can get access to the free file library and download PDFs of the patterns. I would love to know what you're going to be using your square for. Drop me a comment below to let me know what size you made and what you're going to turn it into. I'll catch you guys next time.